We are a little over a month away from the 2025 playoffs, which means the 2025 offseason and draft is right around the corner. So Ryan and I, we are going to be doing our second mock draft on the Tracy Take for the 2025 NFL draft. My name is Tyler, and it's my turn this time to be doing the mock draft. Ryan, you did your first one just a couple weeks ago, so go check out that video, get Ryan's thoughts, or hear about Ryan's thoughts when it comes to this year's draft for some of the players. We'll say the order might be a little bit different, as we're still not all the draft positions are set yet, so it's going to be pretty fluid. But the concept's still going to be the same, or very similar for a lot of the teams, and who we think that they could be picking here as well. But Ryan, before we get into it, this is one of my favorite parts of doing the Tracy Take and doing the channel. Here. This is going to be my first draft. What are some of your predictions here before we get going?
My biggest thing is I think Travis Hunter's probably going to be first overall. I think you just look at what he's done throughout the college football season. I feel like he's going to be a very highly touted prospect because of his ability to play both sides of the football. Ashton Genty's probably going to go pretty high. I'm also going to say I feel like I'm more of the wide receiver guy. I'll probably say only 3 receivers will go in the first round. I think this is a pretty good receiver class when you get deeper into this class. But I think you look at last year, there were 3 receivers that went in the top 10. That's definitely not going to be the case this year.
Okay, so Travis Hunter, first overall. Ashton Genty high up on the board. Define high. What's the number? Number one.
Top 8, maybe.
Okay, all right, and then
I know the Cowboys are sitting there at 9 right now, so I'm a little skeptical on that one because that's like the dream fit for everyone right now.
I like it, and then not too many receivers here in the first round.
Yeah,
perfect. Okay, well, I will say one of those 3 predictions is correct. Travis Hunter is first one off my board. If Jacksonville is sitting there, they're probably going to be getting a new head coach coming into the 2025 season, Doug Peterson. And I think I saw too, just from the research, didn't realize, but this would be their 3rd time in 5 years picking first overall. They had Trevor Lawrence, which was the very first draft of the Tracy Take.
They got Trayvon Walker.
No, and then Trayvon Walker a couple years later. And then if this falls this way and pick him first overall again, then they get Travis Hunter. And so we're not doing trades in this draft. And I say that specifically, like maybe they could trade back, but I also think too, anybody who comes in, you're going to have Trevor Lawrence. You need to improve the offensive line. You need to improve essentially the entire defense. And this is one of the worst secondary groupings in the NFL. And on top of that too, they could use some explosive help on the offensive side of the ball. And Travis Hunter's just a perfect fit for that. Like if they built somebody in a lab to help out all of Jacksonville's problems, he can't block on the offensive line, to be specific, but he's probably one of the best corners that we've seen come out in a super long time. Best athlete I think we've seen in a long time as well. So Travis Hunter to Jacksonville just makes too much sense. Moving then to the other AFC South team, Tennessee Titans as well. Potential quarterback spot here. I personally think Will Levis has been improving this year. They've also traded away a couple of key pieces as well. They had a new head coach, a new system coming in. So kind of in this scenario here that the Titans are going to stick with Will Levis because I think he has some potential as well. He was just a 2nd-round pick, so they don't have that rookie option. And with the new regime that came in, it's not that much loyalty to him. But that being said, though, I think Will Levis is going to provide better results in 2025 than a rookie quarterback that you would select here. And as well, too, this quarterback class isn't particularly great. You can maybe go get a quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round. Like if Carson Beck falls to the 3rd round, you can maybe go pick him up as a safety option potentially. But with that, though, they did trade DeAndre Hopkins. And I think you go look at Tet McMillan here, and I think you have him alongside Calvin Ridley. I think you would be able to test out even further if Will Levis is the guy. And then if he's not the guy, whichever quarterback you bring in, rookie quarterback in 2026 or free agent quarterback you sign to bring in, you're going to have a great young receiver. And this is a guy I know that you've liked a lot as well. And so I'm going to go with Tet McMillan here at Tennessee.
Yeah, just to touch on him, it's very – even at this point, I know Marvin Harrison Jr. came out last year, Rome Odunze, both big guys with great movement skills. It's just very rare you get a 6'5", 210, 215-pound receiver that can move as well as Tet McMillan. So just from like a raw tools perspective, he's a first-round pick. I think you throw in his route running prowess, his catch radius, and his just his hands overall.
Absolutely.
I think he's a surefire top 5 pick.
Well, and I also think too, and it's not that people aren't talking about how athletic he is or his just overall great receiver capabilities, but it almost seems like maybe some of it's a little overshadowed because of just how crazy Travis Hunter is as well, like playing both sides of the ball. Like Tet McMillan's like, look how much of a freak athlete I am, and then Travis Hunter's like, hold my beer. Because he can go play both sides. He plays like 100 snaps a game. And so Tet McMillan is a great receiver. I agree with that completely. I think he'd be one of the top receivers in the past couple of draft classes or in the conversation at least. Like if Marvin Harrison Jr. goes first, like would people take him over Malik Neighbors? Like that would be a very interesting conversation. So moving on to number 3 at the Cleveland Browns So this is the spot where I am going to have my first quarterback come off the board. To me, Shedeur Sanders is my quarterback 1. I believe that they're going to move on from Deshaun Watson, or they're just going to eat it, and they're going to have to try and go just a different route. I think everybody in Cleveland wants to go a different route. So I think that's the route that Kevin Stefanski and the front office go, and they'll just eat whatever cost that they have to make. It was just a poor trade. They obviously lost the trade as well, considering how much Houston is benefiting from all these moves. If they do want to keep going, or if they want to say we're paying Deshaun Watson, we're going to have the cap it anyways, let's see if we can figure things out. They could maybe have a quarterback battle with Jameis Winston. I think it'd be very fascinating if Tet McMillan fell to them. You put Tet McMillan in that receiving room as well. Then you have him, Jerry Jeudy, you got David Njoku as the tight end there. I think that would be interesting. Maybe potential sneaky Ashton Genty spot. 3 might be kind of high if they fall a little bit. I could see them taking them with Nick Chubb coming back from injury, getting older, want to replace that running back, and go back to the Cleveland Brown ways that was successful for them the past couple of years. But in this scenario, though, I just decided to go with Shedeur Sanders here, just kind of a full rebuild, reboot, and at least bring some life and some optimism into the prospects for Browns fans. And so same thing, I think, also going on here with so I had the New York Giants here actually at 4. So they must have just changed it up here because whenever I did it, it has the Las Vegas Raiders. So with New York Giants being at 4 here, this is actually going to be interesting. How do I want to think about this? Because when I did my mock draft earlier, it was reversed. So I'm going to stick with this actually. I didn't have the Giants pick quarterback here. Obviously, I know everything's going to go with Daniel Jones. Now he's QB4 as of the recording of this video. So Daniel Jones' time in New York is done. At the same time, the 2 Brian Dable and Rosen. Is it Josh Rosen? No. Who's their GM name there?
Joe Schoen.
Joe Schoen, that's it. I want to say Josh Rosen. I knew that wasn't it. I'm going to be very curious on what they end up doing here. They could absolutely go Cam Ward, but I think for just kind of the sakes of when I did this draft, I'm going to stick with this. But because I actually had Cam Ward going to the Raiders, just foreshadowing. But I think that there's going to be free agent quarterbacks, and they might go that route or maybe trade for a quarterback here. And in this season, Daniel Jones will be the fall guy. But they're going to have the hottest seats going into 2025 if they still have their jobs after this season. Mm-hmm. And I believe they're going to want to try and have a more trusted sort, at least a veteran quarterback presence, whether it's Justin Fields, whether it's Sam Darnold, whether it's Andy Dalton, who has seen success, and bring in a guy and go for a quarterback in the second round, like a Quinn Ewers or maybe Carson Beckett if he's there, or there's Dylan Gabriel as well, and allow him time to develop and see this veteran quarterback can be more successful. And so I'm going to go with Will Johnson here. They need help at the cornerback position. And Will Johnson he's not been playing this year or nearly as much since the beginning of the year just because of injuries, but he's still one of the top corners in this class. And so with that, as I already kind of said, for Las Vegas, they're going to go with Cam Ward here on this one. Got to see Cam Ward play live when Miami got upset by Georgia Tech. And you can see he's definitely developmental, but also to Las Vegas, I feel is like, no, we need a quarterback to go and build around because they have a couple of good pieces to keep building on. But I think that they are going to be an organization that more is going to want to build around their QB. So start fresh, develop him. You still going to have Gardner Minshew as well, so you can have that bridge quarterback with Gardner Minshew on contract for another year. You just want to stick with it, and then you have Cam Ward keep developing. Maybe something similar to what your Patriots are doing now with they had Jacoby Brissett and then have have Cam Ward develop for a couple months and then bring him in halfway through the season and see what happens. So very interesting, though. They also could go corner as well. It could easily be something. I could have done something in reverse where Giants go Cam Ward and then Will Johnson at number 5. So moving on to your Patriots. A lot of different routes that could go. They could have gone defense. I actually added you guys a weapon here. I got Luther Burden for you all. Help start to rebuild that receiving room. So I'm going to be curious to hear your thoughts on that as well. New York Jets here. So I will say I personally think this is too high for Jalen Milroe. However, with a new head coach coming in, a new GM coming in, they know they're going to have Aaron Rodgers. If Aaron Rodgers is still going to be on the team next year, as I've kind of already mentioned with the previous teams before them, you'll give Jalen Milroe time to develop, to get NFL ready. And I also, too, kind of started to think of, imagine that backfield with Jalen Milroe and his overall athleticism, and you have Breece Hall and Braylon Allen as well. I think it would help alleviate some of their offensive line troubles just because of how athletic he is. And then, too, I need to see if Devontae Adams is still – I think he's going to be a free agent next year anyways. But you still got Garrett Wilson, and then they can go and get other offensive weapons for him. I'm actually not seeing anything right now.
Actually, I think his contract carries through 2025. So I believe they could he could be a cut candidate.
He possibly could be a cut candidate as well, especially too. As of right now, I'm projecting they only have about $34 million in cap, so they might need a little bit more. So, but I'm going to go with Jalen Milroe more just because of the fact that it's going to be a whole new regime coming in, and they're going to want a guy that they can go and develop and kind of build that future direction on for Jets fans, because they're tired of not making the playoffs. It's been over a decade. So moving on to number 8 here, going for the Carolina Panthers. Panthers have one of the worst defenses in the league. And so with that, I'd say why not give them the best defensive player that was left on the board here. So I know you see all the Falcons stuff behind me, but I'm also a big Indiana Hoosier fan. I think I'm just addicted to probably poor football play, except for this year where Indiana is somehow 10-0. It's absolutely wild. And so I say that just because watching that Indiana-Michigan game as well, the thing that gave Indiana fits was just the defensive interior pressure that they had from Mason Graham and from Kenneth Grant as well. And so he's going to be, I think, a top 10 pick in this draft class as well. And I think him going to Carolina, just a good boost. They pretty much, I think anything is on the board for Carolina. Just this team's just so poor. And so I think just getting the best player off the board. I think the only exception might be running back, just because they got Jonathan Brooks last year. Chuba Hubbard is actually, I think, one of the better running backs in the league statistically as well. He's had actually a pretty surprisingly good career during his time there. I think he was a day 3 pick a couple years ago, and he just got a contract extension. So congratulations. So I think defensive side of the ball is going to be the main priority, as they spent a lot of time last year getting on the offensive side of the ball. And they'll make some moves in free agency as well. So Ryan, your prediction for Ashton Jeanty being a top 8 pick was not correct. If you
he's going to go number 9.
Yeah, if you said number 9, he would be correct. Ashton Jeanty to Dallas Cowboys. Just kind of makes sense. Once again, too, something similar with Carolina. I think pretty much everything outside of QB and receiver 1 is on the board for Dallas. Probably going to be having a new head coach. They need a new GM, but that's a separate conversation as well. But I think potentially it'd been great. It'd been very interesting conversation if Mason Graham falls to them, because I think they definitely need help on the defensive interior. They've been so banged up. They need offensive line help. They need more weapons in general. And so, but this running back room is, even to going into, everybody knew like this is going to be the worst running back room. Maybe Las Vegas. Vegas might have competed with them as just the worst running back room with talent in the room. So you go get Ashton Jeanty, the Heisman winner. You heard it here first. I think he should be the Heisman winner. You go put him in the backfield. Yeah. And so leave a comment if you disagree, because I'd love to hear why you think Travis Hunter should be the Heisman over Ashton Jeanty just for the season he's had. And I know Hunter's a two-way player, but that's beside the point. So moving on to number 10, the New Orleans Saints are picking here, and there's a lot of different routes they could go. They've been banged up with a lot of injuries this year as well on the offensive line, receiving room, defensive side of the ball as well. And I really did think about potentially going secondary with them. They traded Marshawn Lattimore. Paulson Debo is going to be free agent, but also he suffered a gruesome injury as well, so don't know what his status is going to be like. So I thought about Benjamin Morrison going there. However, I did end up going with Kenneth Grant, as I mentioned earlier, just with how dominant that Michigan defense interior was. I do believe that this team would benefit from adding him to this team as well, especially too if you just go look at the division where Bucks offensive line is improving as well. The Falcons running game has been improving. You got Bijan Robinson in the backfield, so needing a clear weapon as well in that defensive interior to penetrate the offensive line, provide some pressure as well. So I ended up going with Kenneth Grant there, but a lot of different directions that the Saints could have gone. With the Bengals, this is where I had Benjamin Morrison coming off the board here as well. The secondary has just been absolutely atrocious for the Bengals. They've been very banged up as well. They have a couple of key guys that are also going to be free agency. Von Bell, Mike Hilton, for example. B.J. Hill is also got defensive tackle, so potentially if they want to go with D-line as well, that could be an option that they end up going. But in this scenario, I had them going with Benjamin Morrison. Moving on to Miami at number 12, I had them going with Malachi Starks. I think this is the first player actually to make my draft that was on your draft. But big reasoning for this was Jordan Poyer has had a tough year as well. Javon Holland is going to be a free agent next year as well. I know Starks is going to be a little bit more of a strong safety, but just safety depth in general, I think is going to be huge for them. I do think he's a good athlete. I think he's something that could help out with the defensive line, with the defense in general. Not the defensive line. Offensive line is going to be something that the Miami Dolphins are going to need help on as well. But there maybe could be some tackles that could kick in to guard here, but we'll kind of have to wait to see as we get closer and as we get measurements in on Brian. You love the line. There's no tackles in the league with 32-inch long arms or lower.
Less than 33-inch arms. Yeah, and I will say that I think the Dolphins would be one of those teams that would be willing to take a shot at a Kelvin Banks or a Will Campbell. I'm as the days grow closer to the draft, I'm getting higher on Ariante Ursary as potentially the tackle one, just because he is that 6'6", 325-pound long-armed freak athlete that can do everything that you want. He's just a little raw and unpolished right now. So that's the only thing kind of holding me back. Where these other two guys are more polished tackles, they're just small.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. So that's what's going to be fun about this draft is unlike last year where felt like we got 12 of the first 15 picks correct just because it was blue chip after blue chip after blue chip. There's going to be guys here that we're going to select in the top 12 or think should be top 15 picks that might not even be taken in the top 50 just because it's not too many guys that have broken themselves apart and not too many guys that there's not that big a difference from 10 to 50 or 60. And so it's going to depend on what these GMs, what these front offices who they like, traits. Sometimes they just get obsessed with the guy and they want to take him because they don't know when they're going to have that opportunity again. So moving on to 13, I think one of those guys I was talking about as well, Abdul Carter, I think he's going to help out on that Tampa Bay defensive line, give Yaya Diaby a running mate. And so going to start to see a couple more of these edge rushers come off the board over these next 10 picks, because another one as well too, Nick Scorton as well out of Texas A&M. Had a good college career at Purdue and at Texas A&M as well. I think that they need some help on the edge rushing position as well. So going to go with back-to-back edge rushers here. Just I think athletic freaks as well. I think these orders could be reversed. I think these guys could go up even a little bit higher as well, just depending on where they end up going. So Indianapolis Colts here picking at 15, Jalen Walker out of Georgia. Colts defense is just absolutely atrocious. And I was sitting there and I'm like, there's 4 or 5 guys I think that they could take. They could go James Pierce Jr., could go Michael Williams. They could go in the cornerback direction as well with Revel out of East Carolina University. Though he's been banged up. So that was kind of the reasons why I went in a different direction. But went with Jalen Walker here, but could easily also go with some of the other guys as well. Last pick before I take a quick break, but this is where the first offensive tackle comes off the board. I ended up going with Will Campbell out of LSU. The Seahawks offensive line is just also atrocious as well. They do have Charles Cross, who's done well, but Abraham Lucas has been banged up a lot. The interior of the offensive line has also been really poor as well. So I would not be surprised if there's a lot of picks from Seattle that includes offensive line, both exterior and the tackles, but also interior offensive line as well. So, all right, with that being said, I'll take a quick break. I want to throw it over to you and kind of get your full first thoughts on the first half.
Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of these picks. Shedeur Sanders to the Browns makes sense. Cam Ward is my QB1 right now, so like I think I would have him go there. However, I do like that situation in Las Vegas for Cam Ward. I think with Brock Bowers, that offensive line is actually decent. I think they can get a later round running back, whether they want to invest in that in the second round or on second or third round or on day 3. I think that would be a very good option there. I like this pick for the Patriots here with Luther Burden. I do like him. He's having a bit of a down year. I think he's been dealing with some injuries, and his lack of touchdown production is a little concerning. But I think if you look at like some of the top free agents in that wide receiver room, T. Higgins, Darius Slayton, both bigger guys. And I know like Stephon Diggs and some other ones are there as well. But to me, those are guys you're going to sign to a 3-4 year deal that are going to be with your team for a little while, where Diggs is probably a 2-year deal at most. But T. Higgins, Darius Slayton, those are bigger guys. They're going to play more on the outside. And I think Burden would complement them well. The only thing is, I would love to see the Patriots trade back. I know we're not doing trades here to potentially fall into range where like I think the tackles are going to go. But again, without trades, I feel like Luther Burden is a good pick. Milroe, that's a little high for me, to be honest. I don't know if he's truly a first round quarterback, but in a class where, to be fair, like there's not a whole lot of like I only have 12 first round graded players on my draft board as of right now, and so like that to me I think is speaks more to a weaker QB class as to why these guys are going to go high rather than like teams reaching on them. Just I don't have a lot of confidence in some of these other guys.
Absolutely. Well, and I agree with you there. Like I don't think he's there yet, but even too, for example, like my Falcons, they took Michael Penix and they know there's going to be some time, for him to develop. And if you're going to have a new head coach coming in where you have Aaron Rodgers and maybe Aaron Rodgers is gone, maybe they cut them.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a different way the Jets go. But whoever comes in, head coach wise and also GM wise, they're going to be thinking about the future. They're not really going to care too much. Aaron Rodgers has become a bridge quarterback.
Yeah.
And so if the top 2 quarterbacks are off the board, you go put Jalen Milroe back there who has those traits, and maybe if you can develop him to be successful. But I agree with you, though. I think it's kind of high, but also too thinking about the projection that the Jets might want to go.
I also think too, like if you're going to go the Jalen Milroe route, I would go sign Justin Fields in free agency. Be like, we're going to give Justin Fields a full year to start. It's appealing to him because he could potentially boost his status enough to actually go play. You give Milroe, and I'm not even saying like to not have him active for games, but I think he needs some serious refinement in his just. I don't want to say throwing ability because he has a great throwing ability, but just in his like football processing and actually how to make the pitching wedge throw, and then how to hit the driver iron or whatever, and like really zip the ball into some windows and know when to use each one and whatnot. So like that for me, I think is the big thing with Milroe is just knowing which club to use in the bag. And so but that's going to take a lot of time to develop. And I think that could be a good situation if they get like a Ben Johnson or another offensive coordinator in there. I like all the other ones. The only one I feel like Ben Morrison, and granted, if he's going to be a top 11 pick, he'll probably come out. But I feel like Ben Morrison, he hurt his hip in like September and has been out all of the college football. I feel like he's going to go back, but right now he's still on the board. So
no. It's going to be a lot of fun over these next couple of weeks to see who's going to commit to the draft, who's going to drop out, and so we'll be learning a lot more. And so moving on now to the second half, pick number 17, the Los Angeles Rams. I had Jahad Campbell coming off the board. A lot of different directions I felt that they could have gone there as well. Defense is struggling, secondary is struggling, but I feel like also too they've done a good job getting Jared Verse, Brady Frisk, and improving that defensive front. And so I feel like they could address secondary later on in the draft. And a guy like Jahad Campbell maybe start addressing that next layer, who also has good edge rushing capabilities as well. And so go Jahad Campbell there. Number 18, San Francisco, a lot of different directions I think they could go as well. I ended up going on the offensive side of the route here because the conversations have already started happening about how much are they going to pay Brock Purdy, and they already have a bunch of other stud weapons on the team that are going to be coming actually up to contract at the end of 2025. Also, Brock Purdy is going to be looking for a new contract. His rookie contract ends in 2025 as well. And with this type of draft class as well, where it's not a super stud draft class, I think this is where you maybe take the number one position at the number one player at that position. And so I actually ended up going with Colston Loveland here. Start getting prepared for the post George Kittle era. His contract's up in 2025. Deebo Samuel's contract is also up in 2025 as well. If my information is incorrect, please let me know. But this is what I'm basing my logic on, so I hope it's right. But
no, it is correct. I actually think Deebo Samuel's a potential cut candidate this year because they just extended Ayuk and Juwan Jennings. George Kittle is still there. I like the Colston Loveland pick. That's a really nice pick.
And so with that, when you're going to re-sign Brock Purdy, for how much we don't know, but it's going to be significantly more than $1 million to your cap hit every year. Even if we're be very conservative with it, let's say he's on the top paid quarterback, let's say he gets paid $50 million a year. You're going to need somebody, though, who can replace George Kittle as well and produce, I think, similar type results to what we've seen from Colston Loveland, who, in a lesser offensive system, has already better offensive numbers than he did last year. Actually, could you click on his stats? I just want to confirm that is the case as well. Yeah, so he already has more catches, not as many yards, but he's just as many touchdowns as well, and a much worse passing system than it was last year when they won the national championship. So I think he's developing. I think Kyle Shanahan would love to have him in that system and develop him this rookie year as well.
Yeah, people obviously hear the expression like stats don't tell the full story. There have been so many times on Michigan's tape where I've seen Colston Loveland get open and then just be totally missed by whoever's playing quarterback, like egregiously missed. And so I think he'll be a really nice NFL pro.
Well, and I also think too, another option I was thinking about going was the offensive line, and I think he can help out a little bit in some of the blocking scenarios as well, because he's a pretty big tight end, but he's also very quick and versatile. So moving on to number 19, the Denver Broncos that are picking here. Ended up going with a guy who I've been thinking a lot about where he would fall, because you look at his career in college, he has kind of been the second fiddle through his entire career. I mean, Emeka Egbuka, when he was there, he was also on the team with Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, then Marvin Harris Jr. came in. Now even you have Jeremiah Smith, who is like the clear number one guy. And it's nothing against Emeka Egbuka, but I also think he is just a very reliable guy. I think a team who wants to get another guy running across from Cortland Sutton, a guy that I think Sean Payton would love to scheme open and is a really good route runner, very consistent player. I think he would work great in this Denver Broncos system. Tackle is another option as well. Just the trenches, I think, in general, just keep bolstering that. But ended up going with offensive weapon here in Emeka Egbuka. So here's my Falcons as well. If you're a consistent follower of the channel or the Falcons, you will know how awful their defensive line has been this season. So end up getting them another edge rusher here. And Jimmy Lake is defensive coordinator currently. Raheem Morris is the head coach. Raheem Morris will stay the head coach. Jimmy Lake will probably not be the defensive coordinator. But they're running a 3-3-5 with three defensive tackles, and then you're going to have the outside edge rushers as well. And so I think with that, they're going to be looking for a guy similar to Matt Judon type, and I think a James Pierce Jr. would be a phenomenal fit to this team as well. Matt Judon is probably a rental. They did trade a third-round pick for him. Maybe they re-sign him, but still James Pierce Jr. could be a guy that can develop and be the guy that they can continue to keep on relying on to try and find some sort of defensive pass rush or pressure. I think defensive interior also could be another option for the Falcons here as well. Just because Grady Jarrett's over 30, Eddie Goldman, Katavius Street, who's the other guy? There's another guy that's on there, is all over 30. They did get Rook Aurora last year, who's had a decent season so far when he has played, but they haven't played him that much. So I think going edge rusher here, James Pierce Jr. is a guy who coming into the season was the projected number one overall pick just because of how great he's been in college so far. So moving on now to the Arizona Cardinals. They need some help on the defensive interior here. So I think there's a couple of good options. End up going with Deion Walker here on this pick. Dude is just an absolute stud. and a freak athlete. I think they can move him around a bunch. So I think Arizona would really benefit from that. They've been improving on the defensive side of the ball, but they still need to get some bigger playmakers. That's why I end up going with Deion Walker here. So next up is Washington. They have a great defensive interior in Washington, but they need some help on the edge rushing side. So this is actually where I have Mykel Williams coming off the board out of Georgia. Similar, I think, to like why the Falcons are ended up taking James Pierce Jr. I could easily see them taking Mykel Williams and Washington going with James Pierce Jr. I think just getting an athletic edge rusher that can come off the ball, provide some pressure. I mean, with Washington, too, that'd be scary with how good that defensive interior is with Jonathan Allen, who is done for the season, but still they have Deron Payne and Jersey Newton as well. If they can get some outside pressure also, we could potentially see a similar result to what the Washington defensive line was like a couple years ago when they had Chase Young in his rookie season. That they just had a super dominant defensive line. So here at 23, I have the Houston Texans going with Leak Williams, defensive tackle. They just need help in trenches in general. So I don't think there's too many guards as of right now that they could kick up. Maybe some tackles that they could have kick inside. End up going with Tyleik Williams, though, and trying to help out with Will Anderson, then also to Daniil Hunter on the outside, provide some more consistent pressure. But very curious on that one. I'm curious to see how the Texans keep on doing it and see who kind of moves up, because I think initially the interior offensive line is going to be the primary need, but there's just not guys in my head as of right now that are ready for that move. So 24 is the Baltimore Ravens. This is where I have your boy Ariante Irsay coming off as well. Need some help on the tackle positions also. And so I think you're going to have Lamar Jackson. What's going to happen also, they're going to need to get another running back as well. They need to make sure they are staying one of the top running teams in the league. So having a top tackle as well that they can go and develop, I think will be huge for their development.
Also, both their tackles are free agents, I believe.
Yeah.
I believe Patrick McCarry and then who's the longtime guy there on the left?
Ronnie Stanley.
Yeah, Ronnie Stanley's free agent also.
So 25 is the Los Angeles Chargers. They're having a great season. Justin Herbert's is proven why he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league as well. Offense has been doing phenomenal, especially considering the weapons that they have. I think that's something that they address is going to be adding on more weapons here. Tyler Warren out of Penn State is having a phenomenal year as well. As much as I talked about how good Colston Loveland is, I think Tyler Warren is also a similar type player as well that can bring in a good punch in his rookie year and a guy that they can develop and potentially be a very reliable receiver for Justin Herbert over the years to come. So I have them going with the weapons side as well. They potentially could go receiver here also. I could see them going Isaiah Bond. I could also potentially see them going on the defensive line as well with a couple of pieces. So moving to number 26, the Green Bay Packers. I think the trenches just as a whole, just an area that they need to address. And so I ended up actually going with the defensive side of the ball, the defensive interior. End up going with Derek Harmon, defensive tackle out of Oregon. He's got 34 hurries and multiple sacks so far on the season as well. Yeah, I went a little bit into the depth chart as well, but he's a guy that's extremely impressive.
I do like him a lot.
Yeah, and so I think Green Bay, they got Jordan Morgan last year in the draft who they just put on IR. So I do believe they're going to address the offensive line, something I think that they're just going to do in general anyways, just throughout the draft. We're going to get a guy like Harmon, and he's got the numbers back it up. I think he's going to be a big guy that they can go and build around and help out with some of the edge rushers and consistent pressure, both in pass game and the running game as well. Sitting here at number 27, went with another guy who I saw live at that Miami game, the Miami Georgia Tech game as well. As of right now, Pittsburgh Steelers, they have George Pickens, they have Pat Freiermuth, they have a couple other good guys as well who are good role players that I think fit in the system. But getting a good, versatile player that can complement George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth as well, I'm going to go with Xavier Restrepo here out of Miami. I think he's a guy that you can move around as well. And I know he was a former Falcons coach, but maybe Arthur Smith can create some more creative plays, get some more guys open. Just another good offensive weapon for this team as well. And I think, too, actually, Brian, if I'm not mistaken, I think in the history of the Tracy Take, I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers have gone defensive side of the ball in the first round. Going back to when they've selected Najee Harris,
Najee Harris, Kenny Pickett,
Broderick Jones, and then they got Troy Fautanu last year. Yeah. So having going with another receiving weapon here. Defensive side of the ball, obviously Pittsburgh Steelers is one of the best in the league. They're going to address that position also. A lot of defensive players want to go play for Mike Tomlin. So I think they're going to go and get and focus on the offensive side of the ball here in the first round. Minnesota Vikings having a great season so far. Should make the playoffs as well, even though it's going to be wild. They're going to make it as a wild card potentially. Detroit Lions are just having a phenomenal year. One area that has been a good surprise for them and that has been really beneficial to them is going to be their running game, their running back room. Aaron Jones came over from Green Bay, but he is on a one-year deal as well. They still need some depth behind him, even if they re-sign Aaron Jones. So I have Omarion Hampton coming off here. There's a lot of other different options I think they could go. Guys they can go and develop. Quinton Junkins, Trevion Henderson. There's the guy out of Iowa, Blake Roberts.
No, Caleb.
Who am I thinking of?
Jones?
Go to the running back room here. Yeah.
Caleb Johnson.
That's it. Okay, yeah. Similar, I would say, to Blake Roberts. But in general, though, a lot of different routes they could go. This is a deep running back class. If they don't want to go there, I could see them maybe going on the defensive side of the ball, just getting some more guys as well, because they lost a lot of guys in the last offseason, but they brought in a lot of guys who are doing well. So depending on the certain contract situations, maybe they want to go get defensive line, maybe go address the secondary as well, because they've had some unfortunate things happen and just kind of in the youth in that room over the past couple of months as well. So at 29, the Philadelphia Eagles, this roster is absolutely amazing. It's crazy what they've been able to do and go and develop for multiple seasons in a row. And so one area I think they need to improve on is going to be the edge rushing room. Both Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham are going to be free agents at the end of the season. And with how dominant Jalen Carter is, Jordan Davis is on the defensive interior, and they've been improving a lot in the secondary. I think if they go get a pass rusher and LT Overton, I think that could be a good addition to this team as well. But I think it's more on the position. I think if they'll go find an edge rusher that they feel fits their system the most. There's a couple other guys above that fall. If James Pierce Jr. falls, if one of the Georgia players fall, you know that they're going to take him just because he went to Georgia. But I think going to get LT Overton would be a good addition to this team. So moving on to Buffalo. Buffalo's having a great season as well. They potentially could get some more depth in the offensive line or on the defensive line, something that we've seen them do a lot. I also feel similar to your Patriots. This might also be, if they fall in this position, potentially fall back out of the first round. Some of these teams maybe want to move up, get a little bit extra draft capital. We're not doing trades here in this draft, but I did end up deciding actually them getting an offensive weapon. I thought about a secondary as well, but they have a young secondary that's been playing well. They got Keon Coleman, their deep threat guy, and a young athletic guy that they can go and develop. They traded for Amari Cooper. They have Matt Collins in as well, but both those guys are going to be free agents. They have Khalil Shakur and Dalton Kincaid, who's definitely going to be more their kind of middle of the field possession guys. So I went with a guy, actually, I think was maybe a good blend between Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakur. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Ended up actually going with Tay Felton out of Maryland. He's having a great season so far on, once again, a pretty poor team. And I think he's a good kind of blend and good complement, I think, to what Keon Coleman offers, to also Khalil Shakur as well. So very curious to hear your thoughts on that here in a second. But I think you add him, he's going to be a very consistent, but I think have explosive capabilities, possession receiver, and then you have Josh Allen at quarterback. I think that could be a pretty scary trio receiving room with Keon Coleman, Tay Felton, and then Khalil Shakur. Very consistent, very young as well. So Kansas City Chiefs here, going with Cameron Williams, the right tackle out of Texas. I thought about Kelvin Banks also, but he's the left tackle already at Texas, and they drafted Wanya Morris and Kingsley Suamatia over the past couple of years, who's been playing left tackle. Juwan Taylor is there, but hasn't been he's been doing okay, but not great. Still, you want to get more depth here. So I ended up going with Cameron Williams. I think tackle is just going to be the overall primary position. So if you don't like Cameron Williams and you like Josh Simmons, or you like Kelvin Banks, just kick him over to right tackle. That's fine with me. I think this is more just a tackle position here as well. And lastly, Detroit Lions. A lot of injuries on the defensive side of the ball, and they've still been playing really well. I think one of the things that they need to go and get still just some more youth and some depth at the edge rusher position. You already have a great defense. You've addressed the secondary line. You have good youth at the secondary as well. I think the linebacker room as well, getting Jack Campbell and some of the other players have been doing fine. Also, I think you go get Jack Sawyer, the Ohio State guy, to go across from your Michigan guy, and Aiden Hutchinson, who is hopefully making a quick and speedy recovery, and it'd be great to see him play in the Super Bowl. That would be a phenomenal story just in general if Detroit made it to the Super Bowl, but then he gets to come back and has a big impact. You had Jack Sawyer as well to go across from him, and once again, I think this defense just gets scarier and scarier. But that's my first mock draft. Definitely tell I was a little rusty. I feel kind of talking about it, but it was fun to, as a thought experiment, kind of go through what I think these teams would do here and how that would have it kind of the butterfly effect down the draft. This is going to be such a hard offseason when it comes to mock drafts, because typically, like last year, as we talked about, I felt like the butterfly effect really started to happen at like picks 10, 11, 12, because the first 8 or 9 guys were like blue chip primo guys. Like, you're not going to pass up on this guy, you know?
Yeah.
And here, though, it's like, yeah, Jacksonville's not going to pass up on Travis Hunter. After that, it really is, what's Tennessee going to do at number 2? What's Cleveland going to do at number 3? There's a lot of different routes that they can go, and how that's going to have an impact moving forward. And so there's a couple of picks in here that I don't like, and I know it's my mock draft, but it's just because I think it's just the way the situation fell out. And I think also, too, it's an indicator of just, I think, really how poor this draft class has been relative to the past several draft classes.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like, I'm really curious to see too what it's going to look like after the Senior Bowl, after we have some of those All-Star games, get into the combine. What does our board look like then? Because a lot of times, like, it's hard for guys to really like fall far from this point, but you have a lot of risers, I think, and so like to me, it's just going to get even more cluttered at the top of all right, who's from picks 10 to 50, who goes where and whatnot. Where I felt like last year there was a pretty clear hierarchy at each position of like, all right, here's the top 2 or 3 guys, and then like we'll kind of pick off from there. But it's really interesting, and like kind of getting into the second half, because I already went through the first half. Kind of the second half, I really like how you started the second half. I didn't necessarily like the end nearly as much. I like Derek Harmon a lot. After that pick, I felt like you lost me a little bit. Just on the Xavier Restrepo pick and the Ty Felton pick specifically. I think both of those guys are late day 2 or early day 3 guys. With that being said, like I could definitely see them rising that high, or like getting to that point with successful all-star circuits. It's just right now I view Xavier Restrepo as like a slot only option. And I like some other guys who could do that better. For example, like a Jalen Royals from Utah State, I like a lot right now. I think he's going to be a mid to early second round pick. And then Ty Felton scares me because he's 6'2", 185. He's got some muscle on his frame already, and he looks like he could fill out a little bit more, but he struggles through physicality a lot. And so that'll be something to kind of see. Maybe I just have Tyquan Thornton PTSD there, but I think that could be something he struggles with. And also no Kelvin Banks. That's probably my biggest gripe of all. No Kelvin Banks at all. You're not a Kelvin Banks guy?
No, it's not that I'm not. As I said, like with Kansas City Chiefs, like you can put Kelvin Banks there. If you want. Or you could put him at Baltimore and then have Ariante Irsay fall. And so that's what I'm saying. It's where it's like, yeah, Kelvin Banks isn't in this mock draft, but in my next mock draft, he might be top 10. You know, just because I think that's where this volatility is going to be. How are these teams going to imagine these players in their offensive system? Because even as you said, you only have 12 first-round grade guys.
Right now.
That's a third. It's a little over a third of just the picks. So there's going to be a bunch of guys who don't deserve to be first-round picks that are going to be taken in the first round. You know, so some teams are going to value these guys differently. And I think going back to the Senior Bowl and just that comment, last year, I remember Quinton Mitchell worked his way up into the first round conversation. I know Braden Fisk really worked his way up to borderline first round. He got taken in the early second
Ladd
round.
McConkey did as well.
Ladd McConkey did. Well, he was a second round pick.
But he was like the third pick in the second round.
Yeah, he worked his way up. Yeah. I think this year's Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl, I saw Shedeur Sanders going to the Shrine Bowl as well. I need to confirm if that's true, and I saw it on Twitter, so it must be true. But I think that those are going to be more important than ever. I think we're going to see so many guys now. We start to get first round value just from that, like hands-on training, that hands-on, work with these NFL level scouts, and they're going to take that back to the boardroom. So I do believe the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl may be as important as ever. I think this year, just because of the overall vagueness of the quality of this draft class. So there's not going to be, I feel like there's not too many stud juniors or sophomores that are foregoing their college career to go straight into college. I feel like there's going to be a lot of seniors that move on. And if you are a junior and there's questions on where you're going to fall, and with NIL money now, Benjamin Morrison, as you said, like he was hurt, don't know where he's going to fall. I'll go get more money in college. So I'll just go back to college. So that's why I think the Senior Bowl might be the most important Senior Bowl we've had in the longest of times. I'm not saying that the other ones haven't been, but the amount of money these guys can make if they can go get first round value next to their name is going to be huge when it comes to these off-season programs.
Yeah, and I also look like this is a weak tackle class. You go look Charles Grant from William and Mary, not Chase Lunt from UConn, Gray Zabel from North Dakota State, both left tackles that committed to the Senior Bowl already. I'm not as up to date on the East-West Shrine Bowl commits, but I know like the Senior Bowl has gotten a ton. Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, the two wide receivers from Iowa State are going to go. Like it's going to be a packed class again at the Senior Bowl, and so I think that's going to be really important. And also, like, I think one of the big things, and not to harp on it because we talked about it a little bit already, but just the measurements for some of these guys, like Savion Williams from TCU, 6'5", 225, reportedly could run a 4.3. Like at that size, that should get you at early day 3 consideration at the latest.
Well, and instead of maybe Xavier Restrepo, maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers would be like, this guy's a stud. Like, go put him across from George Pickens because we need.
Yeah, maybe.
Or maybe Buffalo as well. Because I think that's one of the things that's been interesting too. A guy like Savion Williams, as we're seeing now, like Quentin Johnson is having a much better sophomore year. I think a whole new coaching system as well to come along with that. Mm-hmm. But those types of guys, if you go and develop them, they long term can have that success. So that's where I think the Senior Bowl and these off-season programs, the Shrine Bowl, is going to be huge. And Shedeur Sanders is going to the East-West Shrine Bowl.
Yeah, I looked that up also. He is going to be there. And so like that'll be very good, especially the Shrine Bowl. Usually you don't see quite the caliber of players. Still a lot of players go to the Shrine Bowl and get drafted, but like you don't usually see. Remember Zay Flowers went 2 seasons ago, and that's probably I think the highest drafted player that they've had there in a little while. But again,
Shedeur Sanders is going to be drafted in the top 5.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah, so he'll be the highest player now.
Yeah, so this is a really fun draft class. I think this was a good mock draft. I'm curious to see the people's thoughts on these picks. So let's go ahead. Let's wrap it up here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. It is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, go ahead and leave a comment on who your favorite pick was, or if you didn't like the pick that your team made in this one, let us know who you think it should have been. And other than that, we'll see you guys next time.